All right, let's address a couple things here. Folks are telling me, or we're getting lots of comments, this thing is turning east. It's not turning. There is no turning with this storm. What it was doing is it started with a north motion yesterday, and now the motion is more northeast. That was always in the forecast. Had it passed the Yucatan and headed straight north, it would have hit Destin. That's where it was south of. It needed to start moving north-northeast in order to make that track toward the Big Bend. The white here is the cone from the Hurricane Center. This is a visible satellite picture of the eye. The eye right now is right in the center of that cone. And as the eye wall collapses and the new one forms, it's going to wobble probably in this cone. But there is no turn to the east. This is not turning toward the Florida West Coast. There are no mechanisms in the atmosphere right now that would cause it to do that. This is not going to make a 90-degree turn. I mean, in the next couple of hours, it's going to be at the latitude of, in the next few hours, it's going to be at the latitude of Tampa. Once it passes your latitude, it's not turning towards you. I mean, Fort Myers, it's already west of Fort Myers, and it's going to continue. It'll wobble. Sure, it might go on the right side of this cone, which would mean a track a little closer to the Florida West Coast. But that does not, in any meaningful way, change the conditions that we're expecting here. The forecast that you went to bed with last night is the same exact forecast that we've got right now. Literally nothing has changed. Yes, as the eye wall was forming, it looked like it kind of wobbled out of the cone. But now as the thunderstorms are wrapping back around the eye, the momentum of that has flipped it back into the cone. So it's going to do that. Remember, this is not on a track. It's not following a road. It's not a car. It's not a train. It's free to go wherever it goes. And although we, to make our lives easier, like to paint straight lines and cones that make it seem like it's following some kind of track, in reality, it doesn't. These low pressures wobble back and forth. They're not tied to being in a certain location. They change size and shape and forward speed. It's an ever-evolving system. So to look at it and compare two positions and say, oh my goodness, it's turning, that's not the way you do that. You've got to observe this thing over 6, 8, 10, 12 hours and average out a direction of motion. And that's why we're going to use this graphic here to kind of track it. The eye is right back in the middle of the cone. I would say now, well, maybe now it's wobbling away from us. And it could be for the next 2 hours and then start wobbling back and then forth. And it's that windshield wiper effect. Remember that. It's just going to keep doing this. It's not going to travel in a straight line towards the point of landfall. So if you've got some sources on TV, online that are suggesting that this is happening, go ahead and unfollow them right now. You're going to give yourself an anxiety attack here by reading into this, okay? It's not doing that. We're going to be just fine. This hurricane, it is big. We're going to respect it. It's going to pass to our west. There's nothing that I see in the forecast that's going to change that in any meaningful way for us. I think it's very important to remember. I understand. There's a lot of anxiety with this. You're seeing the data, you're hitting refresh on your feed, all these images are coming up. Simplify your sources to just meteorologists that are giving you the facts that this thing is just continuing north-northeast, and that's what it's going to do. North-northeast at 14. If a hurricane were to turn abruptly, one of the first things it does is it would need to slow down. This thing is speeding up its forward speed. And just the momentum of that is just going to push it right up towards the Big Bend. It's moving at 14 now. It may be moving 15, 16, 17, 18 miles per hour, maybe more by the time it gets to the coast of the Big Bend. Pressure has held steady, which is good news. Maybe it's not rapidly intensifying. These thunderstorms keep trying to wrap around the eye. We've now got them on the southwest side, but now the east side of the storm is kind of raggedy. So it's never been able today to really form into that solid buzzsaw type hurricane, which is good news because maybe it will not get to Category 4. Will it get to Cat 3? I think so, no matter what its presentation is. We're so close. It's over some warm water. Conditions ahead of it are favorable. There's a large area of upper low pressure to its north that's actually pulling it north. Those can sometimes enhance the conditions around the storm to help it strengthen. maybe increasing the speed at which it does so. So that's why the Hurricane Center still thinks there is a window up until landfall for strengthening here with this storm. They've got it at 120, strong Cat 3, south of the Jefferson-Wakulla County line. That's right at the apex of the Big Bend, and then still potentially strengthening. So they're going to be issuing, once you get close to the coast, hourly position updates based on the radar image. That's the best way to do it. There's no guessing game. They know exactly where the center is. And with the radar, once it gets into radar range, they're able to measure the speed of the raindrops around the eye wall. Really cool technology. And they're able to determine the winds from that too. So we're going to get some really clear information as it's approaching. Of course, by that time, for folks up here, that's already too late. When this thing is within radar range, the water is going to be rising, the winds are going to be increasing, the rain is going to be pouring. You're almost in the eye. It's only within about 100, 120 miles that you start to get really good radar data. There's the track Hurricane Center, roughly toward the middle of the track. They turn it a little bit north earlier than some of the models do. It could still go into Taylor County. At 11 a.m. it was here, now it's here. Yeah, I could shift another 25 miles to the east. That is not a turn. Shifting the track 30 miles to the east is not turning the storm. It's simply extrapolating its future location a little bit to the right, not a turn, but just shifting it a little bit to the east on the coast. That kind of a change in the storm's position, no meaningful impact on the weather that we see in the Bay Area. Simply because where we are, the effects of the storm are not concentrated like they are near the eye wall, where being 20 or 30 miles east and west of the eye does make a huge difference. Once you're 200 miles, 100 miles away from the eye, the conditions do not change in a meaningful way over short distances. You've got to travel farther to see a big difference, which is why, and I'll show you this later, the wind gust difference between, let's say, Lake Wales and St. Pete are not really all that huge. This is a distance of 60 miles. Lake Wales is going to gust to 50, 55. St. Pete, 65 to 70. 20 mile per hour difference over 60 miles. Near the eye, the difference over 60 miles could be 70 to 140. That's when that small change in distance in landfall location does make a meaningful difference for those communities. It will not here in the Bay Area. You saw the surge numbers, they have not changed. And I don't think the Hurricane Center is going to drop them just for the reason, unless the storm does something unexpectedly and falls apart, just for the reason that they want folks to be ready for the worst because of the timing of the surge. We talked about this at night. The expected level of it, so dangerous. They really want to encourage you and everyone else up the coast to just get out of the storm's way. So there you see the tropical storm force winds. They're in the light yellow. Yes, the latest update does bring the hurricane or the strong tropical storm force winds a little bit closer to us. So there is a possibility that this evening along the coast, we may get into a brief period of sustained winds near 60 miles an hour. The 115, 120, 130 mile per hour winds are going to be literally right here. Nowhere near our coast. If these winds are out here, even these red winds, these are the hurricane force winds, they're still, let's measure it. We've got all the tools, we've got the time. The hurricane force winds from Indian Rocks Beach are going to be about 50 miles. So even if this thing tracks another 20 miles closer, the math does not work here to bring us into hurricane force winds. And the actual strong Category 2 winds, those winds are literally next to the eye. So let's do a measurement. Indian Rocks, which is the beach that's the closest to the center, and let's take you right about to the center. About 100 miles away is going to be the center. So the strongest hurricane force winds, those 100 plus mile per hour winds, they're going to be 70, 80 miles from us. 20 or 30 miles closer to us, that little jog, still doesn't meaningfully bring us closer to those winds. They will still be well offshore. I just do not see a situation right now, based on the current data, based on the current forecast, what the storm is doing now, where these winds would be somehow pushed into our area. really feel confident about this storm, okay? We've done this before. This is not one of those strange storms that comes in from the south and east where a jog east and west like Irma and Ian makes a huge difference in landfall location. It's coming in from the other side. Here, for us, it's not as meaningful. This is a different storm. This is not Ian. This is not Irma, okay? This is a different storm. Every storm is different. I know we like to compare them, but you really shouldn't, especially since this one's coming in from a different direction. This is a completely different storm. Winds right now, 25 to 35 miles an hour. So we are getting close to tropical storm strength, but still below that. I mean, we're still hours away from the strongest winds, probably 5 to 6 hours away from the peak winds starting to move in. If you're in the Nature Coast, you're even farther away from that. You may be 6, 7 hours away from peak winds. The peak winds here may be really after 8 p.m., whereas down in Sarasota County, some of your strongest winds will probably start before 6. There are the gusts right now. This is exactly what our computer model was indicating. Mid-afternoon gusts in the 30s and 40s, and that's exactly what we've got going on. And you see what I mean here? Is there a meaningful difference? Bartow's gusting to 39, 45, 50 miles to the west. St. Pete is gusting to 44 and Bradenton is gusting to 48. Being 50 miles closer to the center in this part of the storm only increases your winds 5 to 10 miles. There is a difference, but is it huge? Is it going to make an overall difference in the preps in what we're forecasting? No, it's not. These 15, 20-mile jogs don't make that much of a difference over our area. And just really want to make sure that you understand that this is not something that is going to change in a meaningful way. Trust us, the forecast here is holding on. We do have rain offshore. We've had very little rain. It's kind of been a weird hurricane, hasn't it? I mean, we're talking about it, the wind. Some of you are sending me, I've just posted a couple of videos on my Facebook page. I am getting to your emails. Thank you so much for sending this. greg.dee@wfts.com. Send me those videos, Greg Dee Weather on Instagram and Facebook. Post them, message them to me. I will be posting them online. You're sending me pictures of your neighborhoods flooded. I understand in ways you've seen before during high tide events, and it's sunny outside. It's kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of hard to put the two together. It looks like a beautiful day with a lot of flooding, kind of weird. It's just the way this storm is. It's a stronger storm. A lot of the rain is pulled towards the center, and we're kind of on the fringes of it still. So I don't think we're going to get into any kind of serious rain here along the coast until later tonight. There is a tornado watch up until 8 o'clock tonight. It actually covers the entire peninsula from Miami into South Georgia, almost up into South Carolina, and actually Charleston is under a tornado watch too. It's these thunderstorms out here up the East Coast that we're watching. All right, now see these rain bands right there? This is where our next tornado threat will come from, actually 2 areas. This band that's developing here, south of Lake Okeechobee, this probably stays out towards I-95, so I'm less concerned about that. Highlands County, though, you know I got you. We'll watch this. These cells right here. These cells in the storm, in these outer rain bands, this is probably where we're getting some stronger tropical storm force winds. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. These probably have water spouts in them. So as this swings towards us in several hours, this is not going to be soon, this is where the tornado threat is going to be with this storm. So I think the tornado watch is absolutely warranted. We saw a slew of these warnings with Debbie. So far, we've only seen one in our area earlier this morning. That was back in Manatee, Hardee, and DeSoto counties. And there might have been a brief touchdown in Polk County without a warning, which is also possible in any of these cells. But right now, cloudy skies, clouds are flying over Ray J. There is a lot of wind in this storm. And that's another thing you might have noticed. If you're not near the coast, like some of our reporters that are on the water, they're getting a consistent wind. Away from the coast, the wind runs into obstacles. Trees, buildings, hills, topography that goes up and down. It breaks up near the ground. The strongest winds are just above the tree line, whatever the line is, the building line, and they stay there until something pushes them down. It could be just mixing in the atmosphere that pushes a wind gust down. It could be a rain shower that's moving by that pushes that wind down, and that's when you get that strong 15, 20-second gust to 50, 55. And then for the next 45 minutes, the winds are 20 miles per hour. And it just doesn't seem like there's a storm out there. So here's Futurecast. Let's take you through the rest of the afternoon, hour by hour. Notice it is showing the possibility of these stronger cells. The cells I just showed you out in the Gulf of Mexico, those are going to start to move on shore. And there absolutely will be a tornado and waterspout threat with these. We're going to focus on these. We've got a live view this afternoon. Look at Howard Franklin. This is southbound mile marker in the upper 30s, was at 38.6. So that is the Howard Franklin, the wind there, obviously. And look at the waves and the action there. You guys can send it back to me, actually, if you can. You see the lanes there. So the northbound traffic, the right lanes are flooded. And the bridge at some point is going to have to be closed for wind and water. Let's get off that shot. It is really shaky. I know my home. Sorry. That's a lot. We're going through a hurricane. You know, it's hard to hold that steady. You see these cells moving through, more of them this evening. This is 8 o'clock. There's the core of the storm. The model here showing a large, kind of a raggedy eye. Kind of makes sense. It's kind of what we're seeing. That stays up here toward the Big Bend. So even this model, which is a little closer to us than the hurricane center, is still keeping the strongest core of winds, which is this ring here. These are your hurricane force winds, 60, 70 miles northwest of us. So if it goes 15 miles closer, that number now is 50 miles, but it's still not on top of us. Crystal River, you might get into some hurricane force wind gusts. I could see that. But that would not be unexpected since you're going to be closer to the center of the storm. By 11 o'clock, it's all winding down. So let's talk about the wind. This is the same model now with the winds. It's been doing a great job with this. It's now 1:30. At 2 p.m., it's calling for wind gusts between 40 and 50 miles an hour. I just showed you that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Some gusts of 48 in Bradenton, St. Pete, and it's maxing those two towns out around 50. So it's doing a decent job. It's not going to get it perfect. These models don't nail it every city, every number, every hour, but they get the general idea of what's going to be happening. 4 o'clock, still, I think we're going to be just fine here. It's between 4 and 6, things start to ramp up. The heavier rain cells move in. This is when the winds start gusting to 60. So unfortunately, as the sun is setting, that's when our power outage numbers are going to go up. It's also at this point, as the eye is in this location to our west, and this is important, this is when the wind, which has been all day like this, southeast, pushing the water away, the wind will turn, and on the south side of the storm, it starts to come in from the south and west. And this is what pushes the water, the Gulf, into the bay. The bay is a giant tub, a basin, and this is where you start to watch for that water rise as we head toward high tide. So unfortunately, the fastest water rises, the ones that concern us the most, are after dark, which is why, even if you don't think you're going to see flooding in your area, you just want to have that peace of mind and not having to deal with this during the nighttime hours when power's out, you're dealing with down power lines and trees, and now you have to worry about water coming up into your property. That's a very stressful situation. And it's still not too late to get yourself away from that if you've decided to stay. Yeah, it's an inconvenience, but I would take the inconvenience over having to be in that situation. And hopefully most of us that do leave, if you were in zone A, you evacuated, you come back tomorrow and you say, oh, all right, everything is fine, everything is dry. Not a bad way to end this storm. 7:30, you see the core winds here, maybe gusting to 70 in Newport Richey, close, probably in the 60s. Brooksville, Crystal River, definitely. I think Crystal River definitely sees wind gusts over 70. That's almost a given, being how close they are to the center, and that the strongest winds tend to be on the east side of the storm. So that's a candidate for a hurricane wind gust for sure. Maybe Brooksville. Is Tampa going to gust to hurricane force? I don't think so. Possible, the chance of that is low. Is Lakeland going to do that? Sebring? No. These winds here are going to stay at the most 60, maybe a gust just above 60, but the majority, 95% of your wind gusts here are going to be 50, 55, that kind of deal. Still could cause some sporadic power outages, but nothing overly serious. And then by 10 o'clock, the winds start to die down. Hopefully this is the way things work out, because with these winds dying down at 10, we're still heading towards a high tide, but we're not at max high tide. High tide maxes out in most places. There's two high tides, a lower high tide and an even bigger high tide tomorrow morning. That first lower high tide is around midnight. Depending on where you are, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So if we can get the winds to substantially die down by then, maybe we'll just hit the lower range of that surge forecast instead of the higher range. There's 11:30, winds continue to die down, and by tomorrow morning, it'll be breezy, I think, to start tomorrow morning, but the storm is done. 3 a.m. in the morning for most of you, it's done. 5 a.m. for sure. Still looking at some chances for rain here the next several days. Unlike previous storms that have cooled us down and dried us out, this doesn't look to be the case. It looks like there's a lot of tropical air coming in behind Helene, and it may take a while for it to kind of move out of the way. So I think the weekend is going to feel definitely more like summer than fall, but you're going to have really good weather to clean up, maybe pick up tree debris off your roof, off of your property, clean that up, and get it all ready to have a nice, smooth week next week. All right, guys, I'm going to send it back to you.